There's a metaphor in there, but I don't have time to do all that work. Because we have another, I won't say it's a metaphor, but a fascinating artifact that you all have collaborated on and created. And Ryan, maybe you kick us off and tell us, what is this atlas?
Yeah.
There's a printed version of it on all of your tables, so you can reach out and pick that up and sort of follow along in real time. And there's a digital version of it, but Ryan, tell us what we have at these tables.
Of course.
And why you built it.
Yeah, this is going to feel a little bit like elementary school again, because we actually have physical things you can pull out and open up. And so if everyone looks in front of them, you're going to see this Climate Tech Atlas. And what it is it's a map of all of the innovations that we need to radically decarbonize. And this effort has been a wonderful collaboration that's taken over a year with our friends at McKinsey, our friends at Energy Innovation, Breakthrough Energy Ventures, as well as Stanford and Elemental Impact. And Dan, the crazy thing about this is we've all been asked over the past 5 years the same kind of question in slightly different ways. Like in Sonia's world, what technologies can policies support? What should companies be investing in? What should investors look at? What should students research? And this map was an attempt to answer that.
So, just people can see it in front of them, but what are some of the technologies?
Oh, yeah.
And then what are the weightings? Because you actually try and map how much money is going into these places, what companies are playing in these spaces, so that you can help people identify not only where they want to spend their time and their capital, but also areas where they may want to avoid investment because there's already over-investment in that space.
Totally. We hope this is like a head start for anybody in the room that's a investor, a philanthropist, a researcher. If you look at the map, you're going to see two different kinds of categories of innovations. The first one are innovation imperatives. These are the critical needs to get to net zero. There's very little, in many ways, arguments around them. The kind of exciting things on the map, too, are the moonshots. These are the high-risk, high-reward technologies that if we unlock, it really changes the calculus to decarbonization. And so maybe two examples I could give. For an innovation imperative for a low-emissions grid or energy generation, you have the need for 24/7 power that's clean. And so technologies like geothermal and others would fit in that category. We need clean peakers, right? For when the peak energy need, we need clean sources of that. A moonshot in that same area would be something like fusion, right? If many of the entrepreneurs and founders that are starting fusion companies succeed, it changes the calculus of everything. The same thing with, if folks find a way to create more high-efficient solar cells, that changes the calculus of everything. And so this map really shows this opportunity space. And it's, I should say, version 1 of it. And we are really excited to say that it's an open source product that we really can't wait to build on it with you, with the folks in this room.
So Sonia, you've got a background in policy. You've worked in administrations that would have taken a document like this and done a lot with it. Not every administration will, but what are the action items? Why is this useful to a policymaker?
Yeah, well, I think especially when you're talking about policy, governments are thinking about a wide range of real-world objectives, right? Climate change is one, national security, global competitiveness. How do we set our economy up for success now and to be successful in the future, right? So one thing that can be difficult if you're a policymaker is how to sort through all of these different ideas and technologies that you might be hearing about, people coming through your door saying, I have the best new thing, right? How do you sort through all of those things? And I think it all comes down to the impact that we can have by making innovations that we can bring to scale in a reasonable amount of time and at a reasonable cost, right? To make the impact that governments are trying to make. And what's so nice about the Climate Tech Atlas is that it really takes those technology categories and opportunity areas and maps them to understand what could be the overall impact on solving this climate change issue. So really trying to start with the impact and then go backwards. So governments are not in the business of choosing a technology or choosing an idea. They're not really positioned to do that, right? What they want to do is support innovation areas that they think have a material opportunity to make a big impact in the near term.
So Mark, from a business perspective, obviously you helped build the Atlas itself. Your inputs went into it, but then how do you use it going forward with your clients and helping them make better decisions?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think to some extent we're at the front end of that. So, we've got ideas around how we think it'll help them. part of what I'm looking forward to is seeing how they actually take it and what they do with it that we didn't expect. When we started with the idea of the Atlas, or when we were approached around the idea of the Atlas, I have to say there was a little bit of not invented here. I'm just being very honest. We sort of said, well, we kind of know what the 12 technologies are, and they fall between molecules and electrons and circularity and carbon management and what else is there? And what's been amazing about this exercise that I think will ultimately be why it's so powerful for clients is that it has caused us to go back and really challenge ourselves and revisit not just what's the absolute impact and the relative impact, but what do we think is the nature of the innovation that's going to get us there? And I think that's what's going to be most valuable to our clients. We all do it ourselves, and then we do it as organizations. We land on a problem to solve, and then because we have to focus, we tend to have a narrowing effect on our efforts. And I think what I hope is going to be powerful about the Atlas is that even when you've got a very focused mission, picking your head up and saying, what is the nature of the innovation required? And are there others that are around me that are working on that innovation? I think that's what this is going to do when we take it to our clients.
Yeah, I think it sticks with that theme of like breaking down silos and different approaches. Because I'm sure before you started this project, all of you had your own mental maps and PowerPoint presentations. McKinsey had reports that laid out many of these same issues. You know, in coming together and sort of cross-pollinating, was there anything that surprised you that, you know, you were looking at, fusion jumped out as like, you know what, this is actually not on our roadmap, but it should be because of this reason? What were the surprises from working together? And that goes to any of you.
Sure, I can start. One was just something that we think a lot about is the stage right before large-scale deployment, right? So when you're thinking about the policy world, a lot of times you're really just trying to use policy, different tools to pull through that technology to get to scale. And scale is really the objective in policy, right? So at least for me, I think that there are some technologies that are a lot further down the curve, a lot closer to really hitting that scale than I had previously thought. For example, an iron-air battery. That's something that could be really, really powerful for solving the issue that Ryan was talking about at the top about making sure that we have peak power at all times supplied by clean energy. And if we can really pull that through and get that just from, you know, these pilots that are so exciting to actually really getting deployed to solve a lot of people's problems and make people's lives better, that's so exciting.
I think one of the challenges of this project was, I think a lot of us, from our point of view, we started it, my colleague Jonathan, from the technologies, right? And ended up being this really large list of technologies that are out there, right? Like about 2,000 strong. And that was the wrong way to approach it. And so I think the surprising piece to it is really what both Sonia and Mark got to, which is, how do you frame these as problems that need to be solved? Because I think in any avenue, whether it's on the policy side or in the business side, you try to sometimes over-prescribe things. But what the map tries to do is it tries to really lean on the imperative. What are we really trying to solve? What kind of provocation do we have for entrepreneurs and folks that are deploying this technology? It needs to work 24/7. It needs to be able to do a clean peak. It needs to be able to transmit energy. And so I think folks are hopefully going to approach this a lot more approachable than maybe, my engineering hat and the way that, the project originally started.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. It's the opposite the way a lot of technologists approach it. It's like, I have this technology, what problem can it solve? As opposed to, this is the problem I have, what technologies can solve it? Which there are lots of different ways to achieve the same goal. So everybody's got a piece of paper in front of them. They're probably holding it and they're like, all these people spent all this time, 80 experts across the world to build a poster. There's a digital version of this that goes a little more in depth. Yes. Talk a little bit about that product and what people will find when they go there.
Of course. If you go to climatetechatlas.com, you're going to see a very interactive version of the poster that's in front of you. You can click into any of the opportunity areas, read more about the imperatives, the moonshots. You get to also dig into the piece that Sonia talked about, is how commercially ready are some of these technologies, and then a whole world of resources. And then I think you can also very quickly expect in these next few weeks ahead, for each of the opportunity areas, we're going to be publishing just deeper pieces, because these gatherings that we brought together really surfaced incredible conversations between folks in policy and tech and academia, and we capture those, and we think they make for some really interesting pieces for the nerdy and curious in the room.
Mark, one of the things we were talking about is that people could use this map to actually decide where they want to work, what companies they want to associate, who they want to partner with. How do you see this informing sort of the future of the workplace and sort of purpose-driven work?
That's also a good question. I don't know if you all see it the same way or if everyone in the audience sees it the same way, but I think if you're going to choose to commit yourself to advancing a technology, then you want to choose on the basis of two things. Well, maybe three. One, what experience you have. I think that's sort of a given. But two, knowing that that technology has sufficient headroom beyond what the current state of the art is to make a material difference. And then three, the ultimate impact of that technology when you compare it to the alternatives that you could be spending your time on is something that's worthwhile. So I think as we each look at these, I'm sure we've got areas that we gravitate, or themes that we gravitate to, either because they're a function of our own experience or because they're where we've been focused, either where we are regionally, where we are in terms of natural resources, where we are in terms of the talent around us. And for me, a big part of the choices that folks are making about where to focus has to be because you have the transparency and the information. And that's what I think we're trying to achieve with the Atlas. Now, if your question is what would I pick to go focus on?
That's going to come up next.
And where, okay, then I'll wait and we can get to that question. But I go back to that second one, right? This goes beyond a little bit what's in the Atlas, but I think when we're choosing the technologies for climate, we sometimes find a interim focus on what is a transitional technology rather than an end state technology. Many of us debate this a lot, right? And I think end state, you have to put in inverted commas. It's not always an absolute end state, but it's a achievable state. My hope is that the Atlas is a bit of a provocation that says, not just because of the moonshots, but also the ones that are not the moonshots, let's push ourselves to make sure that we're making not incremental progress, but meaningful progress.
So let's get in the last minutes we have left. Let's try and do two things. One, tell me any areas that you think we should probably pull back from that you were surprised by, and then any areas that surprised you that you're like, you know what, this is an area that needs to be doubled down on. And you can pick either one or even both.
I think one thing that, in the process that was really surprising, like a moonshot that I just completely didn't expect, was the fact that there's one about alternative energy transmitters. And what that is like, how can you transmit energy using things like steel and aluminum? And this whole idea that you could ship an aluminum product across the sea and oxidize it to produce heat and hydrogen was just mind-blowing. And the thing about the Atlas was like call it the working sessions that we had, surprisingly, in a few weeks later, I ran across a company called Found Energy that's doing just that. And I'd have to say, like in a self-reflection, it was like, I don't think without the Atlas and exploring it would I have been able to see and go dig into a company that was doing something in that space. But this whole idea that we don't need transmission lines possibly, but actually moving a commodity that we move already today was like, that's really cool. That needs to be explored and probably invested in.
And again, starts with the problem, and then it turns out there's this technology that you weren't familiar with,
completely,
like countless others, that actually just may solve that problem very efficiently.
Yes.
Sonia, you want to go next?
I would highlight the industrial sector as an area that we need to double down in right now because, especially from an innovation perspective, I just think that the sky is the limit right now because we are behind on getting new ways of manufacturing the stuff that we depend on to build things and to run our lives, we haven't figured out the best pathway to zero emissions versions of all of those materials. There's actually a lot of really good innovation that has taken place, and there's a great basis for further innovation. But I think that's just one area where the problem is clearly defined. The magnitude of impact is enormous. The industrial sector is, as we decarbonize the electricity sector and the transportation sector and the building sector, the industrial sector is this sort of persistent, difficult source of pollution and climate emissions that really needs some new thinking and new ways to solve.
Yeah, and it's exactly why we have to make sure business stays at the table and industry stays at the table, because there's a lot of work to be done there. Mark, maybe you can get the last word.
I'm going, despite being an engineer, I'm going to the lower left, which is food and nature. A little bit the same arguments that you have for industrial. We have barely begun to understand the mechanics that nature has given us, let alone apply them. And I think that is absolutely where we now have a huge opportunity.
Nature-based solutions.
Nature-based solutions, but also, you know, especially because we're in this moment where we're embracing AI in everything. And if we really have an ambition for AI, it should be that it will help us to start to really understand nature.
Wow, fascinating. Didn't expect that. Ryan, so people who want to find out more about this atlas, I mean, it is available to anyone.
It is. It's available to anyone, climatetechatlas.com. It's got a, you know, if you see anything on that, is it an imperative that's missing or a moonshot that should be captured, there's a nice little link on there for folks to be able to, you know, click on and send ideas. I think one thing worth sharing, like this project would not have been possible without the fact that you have things like solar, wind, batteries that were invested and researched over, you know, 2 decades ago and have reached scale. And I think that's what gives us a lot of confidence that now if we can list the other categories of where innovations and investments are needed, we can follow the same playbook, right? Do great investment in research, scale those technologies up, the cost curve comes down, and then we can deploy them.
Great. And we should add that it hasn't been live that long. When we were talking,
it's like just this
you
weekend.
told me we were going to get a preview, and you actually launched on time.
Yes, we did. We were able to launch this thing on time, but that wouldn't have been, the team deserves all the credit, Dan.
And of course, always. Just like the team here at Techonomy. Guys, thanks so much. This is a great tool. I can't wait to dig into it more. Thanks so much for joining us.